So this is a pretty long, detailed, almost, thesis-length article written by Whitney Webb, but I wanted to just get to the very basics of it and direct everyone to our show notes for further reading because we're not going to have time to go into all of it. But this is just one of those little things that kind of went under the radar that I thought was more important than I think a lot of the press gave it attention. So the title of the piece is William Barr formally announces Orwellian pre-crime program, which is Whitney Webb's way of being a little hyperbolic to make a point, but the point is it stands. So it's aimed at detecting potential mass shooters before they commit any crime. Per the memorandum, Barr has directed the Department of Justice and the FBI to lead an effort to refine our ability to identify, assess, and engage potential mass shooters before they strike. So he talks in this a lot about how the indicators that someone could commit a mass shooting are a lot more subtle than terrorists of other stripes. So jihadist terrorists have certain markers that FBI, CIA finds troubling. They can organize stings. They can, find materials for planning events and things like that. What they're talking about here is basically going into things like medical records to determine if you have had any kind of mental disability or mental ailment that they could pin on it, and actually being able to effect arrests without anything that would constitute evidence that would be like trying to carry out a crime. Basically saying the ingredients were right for you to be someone who could commit mass murder, and therefore that gives us the ability to arrest there, which is kind of crazy. What do you think?
You know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of when the U.S. would go in the Middle East. That guy looks like he might be a terrorist, and the guy could just be some shopkeeper that had no desire to be a terrorist, and then they would capture and torture him for months and months and months, and then lo and behold, after they let him go for not being a terrorist, all of a sudden he somehow got radicalized, and I'm sure that there is no chance that a similar kind of event would happen with what you're describing.
Look, go ahead, take
this
away,
is
Paul.
Just one of those things where what they describe, they don't call it an arrest, they call it, detention or court-ordered mental health treatment, substance abuse counseling, and electronic monitoring, right? So for someone who is identified as being at higher risk for committing a particular type of crime, not someone who was amassing guns or someone who was gonna do something, or somebody who attempted to do, but somebody who fits a profile. That has constitutional implications that if this were to be this is one of those things that really gets in my people who are like, once they try to do that, there'll be a lawsuit and they'll deem it unconstitutional because it so obviously is. And then I'm like, but the Patriot Act, but Ed Snowden and, the FISA courts, wait, you can have a secret court give a secret license to be like, oh, all of the illegal spying that you do doesn't count as a violation of the Fourth Amendment, rubber stamp. Like, that's kind of the thing that this is, and the quieter it is and the more powerful it is and the more it's allowed to sort of seep into how the Department of Justice does things, the more leeway it has and the harder it will be to dismantle. And I think sounding an alarm on something like this early is appropriate. Even if it could obviously be overturned in the judicial process, we need people to be aware of it now and be on the lookout and file those claims when they become appropriate.
Yeah. Again, with the amount of intrusion and how we have a pre-crime program.
It's not called that.
Yeah,
I mean, that's obviously from
1984. Yeah, something like that.
Why not? Let's just use it.
I mean that's what Whitney Webb is calling it.
It's accurate.
You might as well call it that. But hold on, because here's what I'm trying to say here is that, we've been warned about this so many times in the past, and about the incursion of technology and how people are easily judged on the streets, especially with how, there's numerous examples of police corruption and them, basically profiling people. This is a recipe for disaster that can happen to anyone. And we got to be aware of just how inept and corrupt our system is. And something like this forming is a bad idea. It's a recipe for disaster. Daniel.
Also, this is going to directly affect people with less means because in America, healthcare is not a right. Therefore, mental illness is not a right to be fixed. And if mental having mental issues, again, not having guns, not all the other things that one might think might be better, even though that this law shouldn't have been exist in the first place. We'll get that out of the way. It means that poor people are going to go to jail in a disproportionate amount than people who can pay to have a therapist or something of that nature, all because they had terrible luck in their life or X, Y, or Z or 30 other things. They can't afford their medication. So this is also something that you could address if that's something that if I'm saying that if even if we give the mental issue validity, which I'm not going to, Medicare for all would be a much better solution to fix this. And this is what I've been saying for these shootings, that I think the worst thing about mass shootings, I mean, obviously besides the people that are directly involved, is the government.
I got to interrupt you, buddy.
Go for it.
Michael Underlerger, aloha, Cassie Lloyd. I love Bernie, but I refuse to be outbid. Hashtag Tulsi time. Hashtag
man.
Tulsi time. Hashtag Tulsi time.
Okay, that gets one aloha. Give me a second.
All right, one positive note. I mean, in a deep, dark,
I think it's
depressing.
51 aloha.
Wow, 51. Thank you so much for the super chat.
There.
The super
You
chat.
happy?
So many alohas.
I think I'm just going to call that 51. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the super chats. This really helps us out. So I think that's a final note. We got to be aware of these programs coming into existence, and we have to just remember we have to be involved in this election cycle because stuff like this is sadly becoming a reality.